This lesson, you are going to learn a paragraph format that you will use over and over throughout the year in both language arts and social studies. It's called an analysis paragraph. Within your analysis paragraph, you're going to develop a claim about a text. That text can be either a literary text or an informational text. Your first sentence within your analysis paragraph is going to be your claim statement. Your claim is a crystal clear statement about what you're arguing within the paragraph. Your whole goal with your analysis paragraph is to prove that this one statement is true. The next component is introducing your evidence. This is probably the component that the students struggle the most with, so if you don't feel like you've got it after the lesson, don't worry about it. Remember that this is formative. When I introduce my evidence, I'm going to answer the question, what does the reader need to know to understand this piece of evidence? I'm going to introduce what's happening in the story. Let's look at an example really quickly. So I, with my character motivation, looked at Leona's story. And one of the things that Leona says is this. She says, that Citizens Information Center told me to call the public health department. They sent me to someone else. They're all trained to be slippery as snakes. So when I think about what you as a reader need to know to understand this quote, if you had never read Leona's story, what would you need to know? I might think that you need to know that Leona is working to convince the government to remove the trash from the lot. If you didn't know that, you would have no idea who she's even talking to or why she's talking to them. So I'm giving you a little bit of context. So for this introduction to evidence sentence, I might say something like, Leona is trying to convince the government to remove the trash from the lot. Then I'm going to move into my evidence. My evidence is going to be word for word from the text. Remember, I'm going to put it in quotation marks. In parentheses is my page number and my period. Okay, so here's the hard part. This is the explanation. This is where you explain your thinking in as much detail as possible. The more detail that you're able to give me in your explanation, the better your grade will be. This is where you prove to me that your evidence actually supports your claim. This is a really long section. It's 3 to 5 sentences. If you want to give me more, you're welcome to. But I would say that your explanation is doing most of the heavy lifting within your analysis paragraph in trying to prove that your claim is true. Finally, you're going to end with your concluding statement, and all this is restating the claim in a new way. So we're starting with the claim statement, we come back to the claim statement in the end in a new way. So let's look at an example. So I used Leona's story to ask a question about character motivation. And that question that I asked was, why did Leona take the trash to the public health department? The inference that I came up with was this, and the one that I'm going to write about is this, to make the government listen to her complaint. Okay, so I have 2 pieces of evidence that I've identified that support this inference. The one that I'm going to use for my story or for my paragraph is this. When people talk to you on the phone, you're nothing but a voice. And when you're on hold, you're not even that. I had to make myself real to them. So now I'm going to start writing my paragraph. And I've actually got it written here. If you turn to the back side of your assignment, you will see this paragraph. So I'm going to start with my claim statement. Remember, this is my crystal clear statement. I'm going to prove throughout my paragraph, my goal is to prove that this one statement is true. And here's my claim statement. Leona takes the trash to the public health department to make the government listen to her complaint. My whole paragraph is about proving that this one statement is true. Okay, so my next section is to introduce my evidence. But before we do that, can we just take a peek at my evidence? So here's my evidence. When people talk to you on the phone, you're nothing but a voice. And when you're on hold, you're not even that. I had to make myself real to them. So what do you as the reader need to know to understand this evidence? Well, I was thinking that maybe you need to know that Leona has actually made a ton of phone calls already. So I wrote this sentence. After making multiple phone calls, Leona thinks up a new plan for how to get the government to listen. It's what you need to know to understand this quote. It's the context of the quote. Okay, here's the heavy lifting. This is my explanation. Remember in my explanation that I am going to, in detail, explain not only the evidence, but I'm going to explain how my evidence supports my claim. So here I'm going to start by just kind of explaining my evidence, explaining my thinking. Leona refuses to give up on getting the trash in the lot cleaned up, even though all of her phone calls are ignored. In this quote, she argues that when you hear a complaint over the phone, that it's easy to distance yourself from the problem. Okay, so there I've explained my evidence. I've explained what she's arguing within my evidence. Now I'm going to explain to you how my evidence supports my claim. I'm going to make sure that my claim is clearly thought out within my explanation. She believes that if she can show the government how serious the problem is, that they'll listen. So she decides to take the trash to them, right? My claim was that Leona takes the trash to the public health department to make the government listen to her complaint. So here I'm proving to you that the reason she takes the trash to them is because she really believes that if she can show them how bad it is, that she'll make them listen. When the problem is sitting in your lobby, stinking up the place, it's hard to ignore. Okay, so I have clearly proven my claim through my explanation. Notice that my explanation is the majority of the paragraph. That should be true. If you go back and highlight your paragraph, you should notice that your paragraph, the majority of your paragraph, is your explanation. Okay, now I'm going to end with my concluding statement, just restating my claim in a new way. Leona is not taking no for an answer. She believes this is the way to get the government to finally clean up the lot. Okay, your job now. I want you to go back to your character motivation. If you just flip over your sheet, I want you to find the inference that you think has the strongest support from the text and choose the textual evidence that best supports that inference. And then get started writing.